All right.
And here we are.
Ready
now
to go.
we just talk like we've been talking normally, but now there's a lot more pressure because
This is all
it's going to
pressure.
be here forever. Let me just try and adjust this a little bit for posterity.
Yes.
This is going to collapse as well at some point. So we're in Medellin.
We're in Medellin.
How's it feel?
I feel like I made it.
What are your thoughts so far on Medellin?
I have a lot of thoughts, and I feel like they're going to come out, but this place is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I love this place.
What do you mean by come out? Like
It's going to come out through the conversation.
yeah, once you get a little bit more.
Once I get a little bit more of this in me, maybe it'll come out.
Yeah. I've been having a bit of anxiety. Yesterday I noticed, like when we were going to this club, like and that girl was gonna meet up with us, I was like, oh yeah, I'm on guard about like if someone's gonna rob us, pretty much, you know, because I got fucked up in Budapest.
Really?
And
It's not going to get picked up.
someone playing marbles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like when we got robbed in Budapest, it was because we were at an Airbnb and they like scoped us out and all this shit, right? So when we first arrived here, I was actually telling Neil at the thing, I was like, yo, I'm sketching out a little bit about Medellin. There was some there's like sketchy dudes out front like looking at us, you know, and like when I was like, hey, what's up? Like they were just sort of staring, and I was like, how safe is this neighborhood? Like I've heard Poblacion is in Manila. Poblado is like the safest place, but it was seeming a little sketchy, you know. And then like that plus a combination of everyone coming up and asking for money.
That's how you were greeted when you got here?
No, like that was like just like when we were walking around, everyone, like, you know, like no one's minding their business, like everyone's just on it. So it like made me realize like, okay, like the level of poverty here is high, you know, like and so it's made me kind of a little anxious, you know. And then when we were at that hookah place yesterday, I was sitting there, I was like, all right, we gotta get home, like we gotta get the fuck.
You felt it there as well?
Yeah, because I was like, yeah, like because when we got robbed in Budapest, so this is a me thing, but when we got robbed in Budapest, it was because me and my friends, we all went to the bar together, and they were scoping out our apartment to make sure that like we'd all left, and once we left, then they all came in, right? So that's sort of some of the thoughts that I had when we were at this hookah place, and I was like, yeah, like we're pretty far from home, we gotta get the fuck back home. And then that girl was coming, and I was like hesitant to even bring her here, because I was like, I don't know, like, you know, I was like, I don't want her to see any of our cool shit that we have, you know. It's like like if someone takes this place, like they're getting a lot of shit. So I felt a little bit of that like in the airport when we first got here, because I came shortly after you guys. And everything was smooth, everything was smooth going through the airport, everything was fine. So when we got out of the airport, it was like the Ubers stopped running because there's a curfew. And there's these guys at the entrance of the airport, and they look like hyenas. They're just like looking, they can smell the foreign, like the foreign on you. They can tell that you're not from here. And they're just yelling in Spanish, and I don't know any Spanish. So it was like, okay, this is a little bit of a culture shock, but it was really a leap of faith getting in one of those taxis, because they could have taken me anywhere. They're a little sketchy.
Right?
A little bit sketchy.
Yeah, and I there's a point where I was kind of like almost meditating and kind of like trying to guide reality where I wanted to, because it's like at this point I'm Schrodinger's cat in this fucking car, and it could go either way. They could drive me to a fucking alley and just like take me hostage and like make me call my family, or everything could work out fine. So I was trying to like focus all the energy to push reality,
make it work out fine.
Yeah, and it worked out. It worked out fine, but I am very aware of like, okay, there is a lower floor of poverty here, but the ceiling is just the same as where we come from. Right? There's a lot of rich people here, but that floor and that disparity kind of creates the crime, like the potential for crime that you can see, right?
My buddy Fergal, I've been trying to convince him that we should go to South Africa, and he's like, I will never set foot in South Africa.
I've heard bad things.
That was the exact reason. He's like, the disparity is too much, like just because there is wealthy people, but there's like the gap between the rich and the poor is so big that like they'll, you know, like there's certain places you can't even stop your car at a red light. You're just like, no, you just have to fucking go. Yeah,
they'll take you out of your car in some places. It's crazy there.
So yeah, it's kind of a little bit.
That's actually the reason. So I grew up, I was born in Nigeria, but my dad took our family to South Africa, and that place.
You were
is
born
beautiful.
you're from.
I'm Nigerian.
Africa.
Like I was born in Nigeria, and then at the age of 2, we moved to South Africa. It's a little kingdom like landlocked in South Africa called Swaziland. It's called Eswatini now. They changed the name, but this place was like this pocket of heaven in Africa, in southern Africa. Temperate conditions. It's beautiful. Hills, just like it reminds me a lot of Colombia actually, right? And our family loved it, but like there was just break-in after break-in after break-in. And
at your house or just around?
At our house, like people we knew got robbed. So like my dad and his friends started like planning on how to get out of South Africa. But it is that gap in what you have and what they don't have that kind of creates that potential.
Yeah, but, it's kind of like vibrational. You know, that's one of the things I noticed is like the vibrational frequency here is lower than even where I'm from in Mexico, like, or where I live in Mexico. And that's even, you know, like from Canada, then we go to Mexico, and then here is even lower than that. Yeah. But yeah, so I was saying, like, I loved that Merida when I went there. It's just like I could just feel the vibrational frequency. It's not desperate, you know. There's no desperation in the air. Whereas like you can kind of feel the desperation in the air here. Right. And we were walking around the first day, and there's like all these girls like trying to like hold up signs and ask for money and shit like that, and it's just sad people, you know. It's like fuck, like, you know, you can't possibly save pretty much anyone. So
it's interesting because I just came from Miami as well, and that's another place where it's like one block will be super, super, super rich, like the richest places in probably all of the United States. And then a block over, it's like the hood, like the poorest places you've ever seen. And what I noticed that what the difference was policing. So like they're both policed equally, but like in different ways, right? So like the police in the hood will kind of like hide, and like they're not really in the community, and they're kind of just waiting for you to fuck up. But in the areas that we were staying, it's kind of like they're integrated. They want you to know that their presence is there. They're like walking around. Like they're part of the community in those places. And it makes you feel safe in the richer neighborhoods, but it kind of makes you feel targeted. Not me personally, but I can imagine it can make people feel targeted when you have loud ass car. When you have like, it almost feels like an occupying presence, right? In those other neighborhoods, where it's like it's the same police force, but like the tactics I noticed were different, and I was like, okay, this is an interesting dichotomy that I'm seeing here. Yeah,
and so why are they hiding more? Is it because it's more dangerous? Is it like a weird cycle where there's less trust in the police, so they like make themselves less known? And
might be,
and then since they're less known, there's like less trust.
That might be it. Guys? Yeah, that might be it. But in the like nicer area where we're staying, it's like, no, there's out there, like if anything goes wrong, if there's a little bit of like mayhem, these guys are on site. It's just like 4 or 5 police cars. It's like nothing's happening. So they really locked down Miami, where it felt safe where I was staying, and even like that kind of bled over to like the peripheral of like the hood. But when you're in the hood, it's like, okay, kind of have to watch your back. Anxiety goes up a little bit, but that kind of helps you to like build this awareness of like you're not in a place that you can kind of afford to not be aware. Yeah,
it's kind of like it's a shitty feeling, but it's useful, you know. Like 100%. Me sitting here like worrying, like, you know, it makes it harder to be like present to the moment. But like when we're at that hookah place, I'm like, yo, we got to get home, because I don't know. It's kind of like both. It's sort of like, on one hand, it's a good thing that, like, all right, I'm aware that this could happen and we should get home and we shouldn't be away too long. But then on the other hand, I'm like not present to the moment at all, you know. And it's like, what can I really do besides just making the mental decision, like, hey, we should go back home. Yeah. Then after that, I should have just let it go, you know.
Maybe, because you might have been. I've been thinking about like the moment, right? I've been kind of thinking like the moment is, it's a time and a place, but it's also consciousness, like where your mind is in that time and place. And presence, like you're not in that general, like you're not in that specific moment, but in that moment there could be someone potentially trying to get into this house, right? Like the anxiety you feel when did I leave the stove open, or did I leave my door unlocked? It's very useful and it is present, right? it's just because now you have to make decisions based on that awareness.
Yeah.
Right. So it is useful. It doesn't feel good to kind of like, especially if it's ramped up to an extent where it's like not useful at all, where it's almost like, oh, like there could be an asteroid, or you're thinking about like all these which are real possibilities. If you look up the statistics, like there could be a solar flare in the next solar maximum. I've gone down these fucking rabbit holes, and I'm like, it's not useful right now, and I need to kind of like shrink that scope of like what I'm worried about.
Yeah, it's like kind of bringing your awareness into like, okay, I can worry about stuff, but only things that I can control.
Exactly.
There was this girl, I used to be a delivery driver for Swiss Chalet, so that was my job. And then there was, I worked in Ancaster, and then there was this bar on one of the corners in Ancaster that was doing a New Year's party. This was years and years ago. But there's this really kind of racist lady who was one of the delivery drivers. Like my buddies who work there, they're all Muslim, and she's like, "Do you guys speak English?" Like,
oh wow!
Like you guys, the one guy's like a really proper. She was pretty much just like, "Would you prefer to be white than Pakistani?" And we're like, "Bro, like lady, what the fuck?"
I've dealt with some of those people, and it's just like. Weirdly enough, I like engaging with those people because I'm so curious, like how
did you form?
Yeah,
and she was like she was a nice lady.
Yeah,
but she just like I don't know. She just said these things, and it's like,
and that's like the disconnect that I have because I'm like, I know you're like a nice person, but like, do you not understand how this could be perceived as like you being like negative or like this? So I have these conversations. I'm like. No, I'm not trying to steal from you, or like whatever like weird way that like a racist conversation could go. I can sit in the fire enough to just be like, okay, like what is it? It's almost like Zen, where I'm like, oh, you've offended me, but what is that?
But what is it like? Is it like what makes that? Yeah. The actually that was an interesting thing. Remember I was telling you my friend who told me I'm not allowed to post memes that have the N-word in them.
Yeah.
And you were like, you can't be saying that. But when she explained it to me, she's like, I'm having this weird conflict in my brain because I've met you a lot of times, and like I think you have a lot of good traits.
Right.
But then I can't understand how you could do something like this, And it was like her brain was coming apart. She's like, he's clearly a racist.
Right. Right. Okay. That's
so then like she was having this weird thing. She's like, because I've met him a lot of times. He's very nice to me. He cares about what I'm up to. We've worked together. But then he posted this thing, so that means and there was like this. It kind of like tore her like consciousness apart because she just like couldn't take into account this person she knows. Yeah. But then like I guess the ideal of someone who would use the N-word in a sentence. Which I didn't use.
No, you reposted.
It was like a meme where someone used. So someone would post like they pretty much use the N-word the same way they use like mans or guy or like MF. This MF. He does this. So it wasn't even there was nothing even about race. It was just
it's a meme.
Yeah, it's a meme. And she's like, no, like those aren't for you to laugh at. And that was
okay.
But yeah, like getting back to it, it was like it kind of like I felt it was separating her consciousness because she's like, there's this guy I know, and then there's this idea of like anyone who uses these words are racist kind of, and she was sort of trying to piece it together. And actually, she's back in Mexico, and I talked to her, and she's like, like don't just ignore all that shit, like, and she's just like, we're tight, like, we're really tight again. And I was like, look, I would never say anything to offend you, like me, like I would never do anything like that, but
I think part of what that is like in examining the other person, there is a self-reflection that kind of like if you're not self-aware, like when you're examining another person, like in the instances that I've had where it's like I think this person might be racist and I'm talking to them and trying to like pick through their mind, there is an element of me picking through my own mind as well, because it's like, okay, like I have this like idea like, okay, this person is maybe prejudiced or racist, right? So then it's like, but this is a nice person, so I'm trying to consolidate those two ideas together. But in doing so, you kind of like realize it's like, oh, okay, this is just a person, and that changes you. Like you going through that other person's thought process kind of changes you in the process, right? And I think the same thing might have happened to her, where it's like, okay, like he's clearly a racist. He posted these memes. But he's not, because he doesn't see me as lesser. So it's like, what is a racist then? So now you have to go back and either redefine him, right? Jeff is a racist, or
I guess that would probably be her default, because she was like had a thought of me, and then she's like, but you said that, so like we'll just put him in this box,
right?
And then part of her was like, but he's not fitting quite into this box,
right?
And then she had to
redefine one of those boxes, right? So it's like I got to redefine Jeff as a racist, or I have to redefine what I think of as a racist. And I think in that case, like what she thought of as a racist kind of changed, because she wouldn't be friends with you if she was a racist, or if you were a racist, right? So it's like, I think that same process has happened to me, where it's like maybe there's like because I went to school in Hamilton, and like Hamilton has like a ton of Italians, right? And like Italians have like this, they have their grandparents, they have nonna and nonno, right? And like they're always super nice, right? And then I'd hear things and hear stories of like, oh, like nonno doesn't blah blah blah, or she said this or she did that. And it's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. How like this person who's nice to me brings me food and she wants me to eat at their house, and then like behind closed doors they think this about me. So it's like, so I kind of came to the realization, it's like, okay, like that it's weird, because there is this movement to broaden the scope of what racist means, and a lot of what these terms mean, like anti, like whatever disparaging, whatever term you want to say. Like there's this movement to broaden these terms, but
hate it.
I know, but like it should be, you should be shrinking it, right? You should be shrinking it, because it kind of makes it specific to who you're looking for. Because if you broaden it, it kind of loses what you're trying to.
That's the thing. It's like being called a racist before. That used to be like, bro, like you can't, right. You can't say that. But then like that bitch, Robin, what's her name? She made like white fragility or whatever, and she's just like, everyone.
That's your queen.
Every white person is racist, and it's like, bro, that's that's a bold thing. You're calling me a racist. Like, in my opinion, you need to have some fucking evidence. Like, can you show any evidence of that? Right. And it's like, you can't just come up with this conclusion. And I haven't read the book, and that's actually that's a video idea that I have, is just like, here, I'm going to break down this fucking stupid
like a book review?
Yeah,
you should do a book review.
Like a book review on that. Because, like all the shit, like I've seen, like Coca-Cola, actually, they have, it came out there.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
The PowerPoint on that, and it's like, how to be less white, It's like, be less confident, be less, like, it's like, bitch, like.
I don't know where that ends up, but I know it's not
It's
good.
not a good place. It's not a good place. And it's sort of like, I'm just sitting there wondering, like, how far is it going to, like, because you kind of need to have, like, that like far extreme, like a pendulum. It has to go to the far end. Yeah. And then, like, it'll kind of come back to the normal. But I'm like, how far in this fucking crazy land is it going to go, where it's like, yo, you can, I don't fucking know. It's like,
sometimes it just swings off and it just breaks, and the society just crumbles. Like, that's a thing that's happened multiple times in our history. So it's like, that's a real possibility. These things aren't forever. Civilizations aren't forever. So it's like taking that into account and being like, okay, like, obviously there's reality about race, and there's reality about like what came before, but are we going to persecute people who are here, actual people, not institutions or systems? Because now it's getting to the personal level. Like, if you're going to say all white people are racist, that is a personal statement, no matter how you try to abstract it to a like, it's like, oh, like, you are that is a part of your identity, so it becomes personal at some point. I can't see that going well. I don't see where that they want to take that to, and we'll see. We can just say what we believe. And
it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary. Like, like when all that like Black Lives Matter stuff was happening last year, that was tough. It was a tough time for me. It actually happened like on my birthday, pretty much. Like,
oh shit!
That was the first time I really experienced it. Like, it was pretty much like, it was. I don't even think I even cared to talk about it.
No, it was wild, because like, even on the other side, like, because I've been having these conversations like for a long time with people who haven't really like seen that side of reality. It's like, what, we had a black president, like those kind of people, like especially in university, because you're forced to like interact with people who come from these small towns, from like everywhere, right? And you're kind of like in this place, and then it's like, oh, like there's an intellectual swing to it, so you kind of like talk out your ideas and how you feel. And I've seen the other side, and it's never from malice. It's kind of just like momentum. It's like
the other side of
of like complete unaware, like just completely unaware of like issues that are presently happening. And it's like, okay, that exists, but it's never from like a hate. From my experience, it's never been from like a position of like, I actually hate black people. It's usually like, that doesn't affect me. It's like, at worst, it's an indifference. And to that, it's like, okay, I can't force you to care, right? Because there is a multitude of issues that need to be addressed. Like Hong Kong is a whole thing. Like Africa is literally like being raped like presently, right? There's issues all of, like, there's issues everywhere. Like,
that's like I have a friend who is very vegan, like super vegan.
Right.
And there's nothing. Oh, sorry.
Playing some footsies.
Yeah. Super vegan.
Yeah.
And she's just like, why don't you care enough about it? And I'm like, bro, like
I do.
You can't.
But
you know, it's like you don't care about like I just watched Slumdog Millionaire the other day, and these kids are fucking starving in the streets, getting beat up. Like all the girls are taken and raped at like 10 years old. And it's like, you don't care about that. You just care about, you know, it's like there's too much shit to care about. Just let me focus on just getting my money right. And like there's nothing,
and if I can,
and I'll it's pretty much like do your best to not do anything bad. But I mean, like it's also like focusing on it just so that also builds up on that anxiety, right? Like like there's this post this girl posted on Instagram, and it was a guy at a gas station. He just like throws this girl against the fucking ground, and like she hits her head off the curb, and he picks her up and like fucking slams her on the curb. And I was like, bro, this is violent. And like my friend posted it, and I was like, I was fascinated by it, but I was just like, I think it's probably a good idea that neither of us watched this, you know. I don't think there's any benefit of watching it, but it like you can like definitely. She's like, no, like you don't understand, but there's definitely a benefit to watching it. And I know her point. I know what she's saying. It's like, women are being like abused and all this shit. And this guy probably got away completely free, you know. And it's a problem in Mexico is girls get murdered all the time, you know. Like if some girl breaks up with her boyfriend, he'll go kill her, and then nothing really bad will happen to him.
Wow.
And it's kind of a common thing. So it's like the feminism in Mexico. It's like I get it, you know.
It's a different type
it's like
of
a different feminism instead of like, all right, like men are evil and this is the thing. It's like, no, like there's an actual problem here that we need to solve. But it was sort of like part of me was like, bro, I probably shouldn't even be, you know, I probably shouldn't even know that this exists, you know. Like keeping that indifference is probably healthy for me, you know.
Because it's like, okay, let's explore that. Like keeping the indifference, is that healthy?
It's kind of like if you're sitting there like, bro, there's so much suffering in life. There's so much suffering with everyone. Like we can go outside right now and just be surrounded by suffering. Yeah. People who don't know where their next meal is going to come from, you know. And then like I'm sure pretty much most girls that we know have gone through some sort of sexual assault situation that like really fucked with them, you know. Like we've gone through stuff, and it's just like, to focus on that's a big weight, you know. So it's kind of like, it's like, actually if you can just eliminate all of that thinking about anything negative, you know, it's like, well, I'm just gonna focus
find a couple of problems that you really care about,
and even don't even like focus on them as problems. Just be like, all right, this is something, you know, this is something that, or I don't know, or just your goals. Just focus on like the positivity of your goals, and then like don't worry about any problems. Just be like, all right, how do I achieve what I want to achieve, and then just forget about everything else, because focusing on, you know, like, what can I do about that girl getting like fucked up in the gas station, you know. Like I can't really do anything, and I don't even know where to start, and then it's like, you know, you could be, well, you can start by educating yourself, but then it's like, but then I also have to do that with racism, with poverty, with climate change, with veganism, you know. And
this goes on forever.
It's like, I don't know, I think I would rather just be indifferent to like some things in my, you know, just keep your circle of actual things that you care about small. And then just be like, all right, here's like the problems that I have today that like when I take an action it directly affects like my inner world. Get that all handled, and then once you have that, then you can kind of expand out to the other things.
I agree with that, because again, we go on our social media, all you see is like creating awareness for this issue, that issue. It's like, how much is this actually helping at this point? It's almost like, and I remember like even with the Black Lives Matter thing, that whole black square thing, it's burned into my fucking brain. It was the weirdest thing.
You didn't post that? You didn't post that?
Never. It was so weird because I'm not like a jump out the window because we're all jumping out the window kind of dude, and we all jump out. No. Once that kind of coercion like sets in, I'm apt to go the opposite way. Yeah. And that'll actually kick me into action. So it's like everyone's posting this black square, and I'm like, wait a minute. The whole point of like us posting like the George Floyd kneeling on the head video was to create awareness, and now we're just gonna blank out our whole feed. And I remember just scrolling and be like, what the fuck is this? It just felt so weird to me. Mm-hmm. It's like there was no real message here. It's like this vague, symbolic message, no real actionable points. And it's like, we're doing it because it's creating awareness because black is all... what? It didn't make any sense to me. And now I'm seeing that with a lot of the issues. It's like, educate yourself, do this, but it's like, as far as like most people's interaction with those things is going to be like a swipe and then another swipe, right? And then you're just going to go from issue to issue, instead of like maybe back in the day you'd get invested in an issue because someone was passionate to go really deep. Maybe you might get caught by veganism or like black rights issues or whatever, right? I don't know. It just seems like it's very peripheral. It's very surface, the level of care now. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, because there's not like it has such a low impact that like my one buddy, he's got a friend who's black and who's like very like pro Black Lives Matter. He's like, bro, can you post the black square for me? Like I would appreciate it. And my buddy is like very against Black Lives Matter. You know,
like
he's
they organize black people.
What's that? No. Like,
but
like you know, we've discussed it many times. He's like, bro, this is so fucking stupid. You know? And he's like, he asked me to post the black square. I was like, hey, fuck it. It doesn't like, you know, it like has that little of an impact as someone who's against
philosophically against it.
Yeah.
He's
like, I can, like if my friend wants me to post it, I'll post it. Like, it doesn't like I don't have to do anything. You know, I just have to post the square.
Right.
And that's it.
Right.
And then you're good.
And here we are.
And you can consider yourself like a virtue, you know, like
it's literally a signal. It's like a virtue flag. It's like a black virtue flag that everyone waved on that day, and I was like,
Actually, when I'm like going on Tinder and I go to someone's Instagram or whatever, and I see that they posted the black square, I'm just like, like this person doesn't think for themselves, you know, like
there's a couple of things I see like that. It's weird. There's that one. There's the pronoun when they're obviously like obviously something, like, you know what I mean? It's like, okay. And honestly, we can get into it. But in Colombia, there's a lot of trans people that you wouldn't know, right? So it's like when they post that, like, I'm trans or like their pronouns, it's like, okay, like, I understand that, right? They're not for me. It's like, that's for somebody else. It's like, and there's no discrimination.
And it's like, I appreciate that you let me know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? But the idea that, like, some girl from fucking Midtown just post like her, it's like, obviously, like, what is that? It's like solidarity with, and it's like, okay, like, I guess.
And actually, Jack, when he was saying that he had to go to that Ryerson talk, and pretty much like they handed out like little fucking stickers to everyone. They're like, "Do you want a he/him sticker?"
It's no. Like, I'm
It's very clear what the fuck I identify as, you know.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't even want to talk about it because it's like I feel like people far smarter than me have addressed that in more nuanced ways. But it's just like, yes, there's trans people, right? There are people of protected classes, right? Personally, someone of the quote-unquote protected class, I hate that distinction.
That's a weird thing. It's like, you know, it's like we have to be better for, you know, it's like, can't you take care of yourself? You know, like,
it's such like, a patronizing piece of.
It's like, we as white people, we need to protect black people because they can't do it themselves. It's like,
you know what gives me colonial vibes. That's exactly how colonialism happened. It's like, we need to educate the savages on how to be civilized, right? it's the same thing. It's the patronizing thing, but now we've taken it upon ourselves. Mm-hmm. It's like an internalized colonialism / slavery thing, where it's like, we're a protected class. We need help from the government. Daddy government, help us civilize this. It's like, no. I personally, I don't think that's the answer at all. Mm-hmm. To fucking, it just it smacks me the wrong way at every single angle.
There's another thing about that actually kind of weirds me out, is when they say like when they're like black owned business, black owned and operated business. Mm-hmm. It depends. Like, you can be proud of it, but like I guess it's when they're like, buy from black businesses. It's like, it's okay. Do they have the shit I would need? You know, right. Bro, like, if they don't have a functioning business, right, and they don't have the fundamentals down, they're going to fail if they're getting an influx of cash because they're a black-owned and operated business. Like, they need to know how to run the business. You can't just expect money to come in, right? Because everyone who works there is black. You know, it's like no. Like, this needs to, like, you run a business to solve a problem. What's the problem you're solving, and are you doing it good? You know. Even
then, it's like, okay, support black-owned businesses. I get the sentiment, right? Mm-hmm. If you look back in the history, it's about like the Black Wall Street, and like it was doing really well, and like they saw it as competition, so they literally came and just burnt the whole thing down overnight. Yeah. It's really fucked up. That actually happened, and now it's like, okay, like the business class of like black Americans, even Africans, like black people in the diaspora has kind of been decimated over time, right? So it's like, is the answer forcing people to, almost compelling people to use black-owned businesses, or is it making black businesses more competitive, right? And that has to be an internal thing. Nobody helped hip-hop. Mm-hmm. Nobody helped hip-hop. Nobody helped black people take over the NBA. Nobody helped that, mm-hmm. right? It's a cultural thing that kind of starts at the bottom, that kind of starts from a sense of pride over what you're doing, and then that grows into the tree of like excellence. You can't force that from the top down. Yeah. Right?
That's a very interesting point, actually. Right? I've never thought about that. It's like, you can't, you can't. Like, white people didn't help hip hop along.
No. There's no sponsorship programs for like, oh, support hip hop art. No, mm-hmm. they actively went against it, if anything, mm-hmm. right? And like MTV wouldn't play black artists for a long time, right? They wouldn't play Michael Jackson until he like became undeniable. So the lesson there is become undeniable, mm-hmm. right? Don't ask for daddy or stepdaddy in this case, to like be nicer to me, and like, you know what I mean? It's mm-hmm. like, no, just
be so good that you're
undeniable. No choice, you know? Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I have zero understanding of this, but Jackie Robinson, like the first
same thing.
MLB player, it's like they didn't want him there, but he's so fucking good.
Luck.
Also, I'm completely making, like, I haven't seen zero of him playing basketball.
He's so undeniable that his story is almost beyond like having to be mm-hmm. to thoroughly know a story, because that is he's the archetype of someone being so undeniable mm-hmm. that if one team took him, right, and broke that color barrier, and they saw the results, it's like, okay, it's over now. We can't on our,
because we want to win. What do we want to win? Do we want to be a racist institution, or do we want to fucking win?
Exactly.
You know, and it's like, we want to be winners.
Right, and that's kind of where I take issue with like the systematic racism argument, because there is systematic racism it's almost like a momentum thing, mm-hmm. right? Where it's like, okay, these things did happen. People's businesses were burned. People were lynched, right? So it's like, what is the answer to that, right? Now, because like black people weren't allowed to get loans or whatever, and like the redlining, all of those issues created this place where we're at right now. The answer again isn't from the top down to like mix everything up, or else you're going to have what happened in Zimbabwe, right? Where the black farmers took the black people, right? They weren't farmers, they didn't have education in farming, took the farms from the white farmers, right? And then because they didn't know how to run the farms, it fell apart, mm-hmm. right? If you had black farmers take those farms, maybe it would work. It'd probably work a lot better than just random people be like, oh, this is my farm now, right? And that's the same argument of like support black businesses. If it's a good black business, right, give them the support, right, from like give them the support of like let's make this business better, but don't just buy from them because they're a black business. It's kind of
there's so on the main strip where I live in Playa del Carmen, there's all these people selling these fucking trinkets. You know, they're selling these trinkets, and they all have the exact same trinkets. They're like kind of poorer people like selling these trinkets, and like part of me is just like, man, like no one wants these trinkets.
Right.
No one wants them. You know, and I can't. And they don't have any sales skills. They literally just sit there and they'll like read the Bible or something and just sit there, and their trinkets will just be on a rug, and you can kind of go up and buy it. But it's sort of like there's zero competitive advantage. Like I can go and get this trinket at numerous of these places. I don't know how much money they make. Maybe they make a fucking killing in it.
You just,
but like I'm looking at them like, man, these are so fucking they're stupid. You know, they're not stupid, but I'm just like, man, like I wish there was a way for me to be like, hey, here's how supply and demand works, and like what's a way that you can differentiate this offering so that your little mockingbird made of beads doesn't look like this other mockingbird made of beads, you know? And there's like numerous ways you can do it. Yeah, it's sort of like, you know, you could put they could put a little sticker that says like support Mexican owned businesses, but I'm like, this business is stupid, you know? I don't have any need, you know, like literally if I give this person money, I buy a decent amount of these fucking little bead things, but it's literally just for charity. I have no use for it. So like to have the support black owned business thing, it's like I will if they have what I need. Like I don't want to just buy something from someone just because like it's a black owned business. Like, it's like you need to have like your business be a real business.
Yeah, people act like it's not possible, but like it is. The most popular music right now is hip hop music. That's a black industry.
That's all I listen to.
Right.
All I listen to.
Right, and exactly. It's like, did you support it because like you didn't want to be racist, or do you just fucking love the music?
Fucking love it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like we know these things like implicitly, we understand it, but then when it comes to like these issues, we kind of like panic and we're like, oh, well, it's unfair. So how do we make it fair right now? It's like. Not that way.
And someone was telling me about this earlier. It was like so who was it? They were saying pretty much this person needed to hire a black female for a job. Oh, it was like Joe Rogan actually did. I'm like having a thought. Like that. Like,
one of my friends.
Yeah, one of my friends had this like one of like the fucking politicians I was talking to was like it was like this girl from Nigeria. I think it was Nigeria or she grew up in Kenya. She had a very interesting podcast with Joe Rogan. And she was saying, like, one of these developers, he was given a job to find a black woman developer for this company. And, like...
That was his job?
No, that was, like, one of his, like, that was his main task. It's like, we need someone to fill this role, but, like, we need them to be a black female. And then he, like, sat there for 8 months trying to find it. It's like, yo, this person doesn't fucking exist. We're developers. Like, we're all nerdy dudes. Yeah. Like, there's very few women, and there's even less, like, women of color. So it's like, bro, like the way to do it isn't to like go find someone like some unicorn and shoehorn them in. Is to start educating, and then in like 20, 30 years this won't be an issue. But like they're trying to fix they like recognize the problem now, and they're like, all right, like how do we remedy it now? It's like no, like we recognize it's a problem, and here's some steps that we can do to long term make sure it's no longer a problem. But it's just like, you know, like the fucking that was my main issue with Black Lives Matter is they look at the problem and they're like, what's the solution? And then they just went all in on that first solution. They didn't like think like that same
cops
thing
are
with
killing
communism.
Black people.
Yeah,
let's get rid of all cops. It's like, wait, what?
Let's abolish the police. It's like that.
Oh, okay. Again, as an African person, I have a little bit of a different perspective because like our cops are terrible, like actually terrible, right? Like they kill people. Like it's just like same thing, right? But I'd argue probably even worse. But the answer isn't to get rid of them because that's been tried, right? And then armed robberies went through the roof. Yeah. Right? And I think the same thing's happening in Seattle and they're like whatever zone. What was that zone? Chaz? Like something zone, like where they had no cops. And there's like a king... basically a warlord stepped up. He's the only guy with a gun, stepped up and took over this whole region, and the cops couldn't go in and stop him. That's what happens when there's a power vacuum, right? So we have all these like historical precedents for what happens when you remove the monopoly on violence, right? it's like, okay, like let's have an educated conversation on how to address these issues, not just cops are killing black people, remove cops.
Yeah. It's weird because I guess like there's a thing called like madness of crowds where like a crowd can't
make it
do anything, so like it all has to be simple. But like the solution of cops are bad, remove cops, that's like a 5-year-old decision. Like that's a solution that a child would come up with. You know? And it's like, you know, like you can't. That's not a black and white thing.
It's interesting.
How is it that you came to that conclusion and then you started spewing that was the answer?
Do you think when you're in a crowd, do you think the crowd's processing power reduces to its lowest common denominator?
No, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, the IQ of a crowd is substantially, like the makeup of a crowd is lower than
it's the lowest common denominator at that point. Mm-hmm. Like that's the answer the dumbest person in that group would come up with. And I know a lot of these people, they're not stupid. They're very intelligent people. You have conversations with them and they bring up like points, but then you see like this cognitive dissonance because it's like, this is what our group thinks and I can't stray from it, even though like I'm trained to think logically. Supposedly you're meant to, you're trained to think logically and understand these issues. And it's like, no, I got to stick to what our team says. Yeah.
That was something with that made me kind of dislike Candace Owens a little bit. Like I like a lot of what she says. And she was arguing about climate change. She's like, I don't think it's real. And it's like, well, blah, blah, blah. And then, like, Joe Rogan was like, you can not have an opinion on something. Like, there's no rule that says you have to have an opinion. Yeah. And she's like, well, here's an example. For a long time, I didn't have an opinion on abortion. If anyone asked me about it, I would say I didn't have an opinion on abortion. And then after I did my research, blah, blah, I realized that abortion is evil. And I was like, Candace, the convenience that you just like towed the exact line of the Republican Party and like, oh, all of your independent beliefs are of this, you know? Like I love Candace. Like she fucking
I think she's dope.
Yeah, I think she's great. But like there's certain things like there's certain shit that she says like that. And then also when she was doing that, like all the statistics on police violence against black people, that like intense video, it was all interesting, but then she like turned the whole thing to a big attack on the left, and it's like, bro, like why do we have to make everything like a big battle between like your tribe and another tribe? It's like, this is
and again I think problem. That's the reduction to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, that's true. And it's like there's a lot of things I'm like, oh, like, how do we do this so that like it bring, you know, it's sort of like in terms of marketing, how is it that we can make this movement of goodness come on, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's like, no, if you just cause drama, that'll do it.
Yeah. If you go to the brainstem, that's where the answer is. Yeah. Like good versus evil, survival. Like a lot of these things are brainstem issues, and it is like a 5-year-old would make that decision because at that age you've developed enough to survive. You can walk, right? You can like obviously humans take a long time to develop, but you're good enough to like, okay, like there's a pretty good chance you can survive, right? Obviously humans need like social networks, but you're not an infant. You're not gonna just
you won't starve to death.
No, a smart 5-year-old can figure it out, right? So that's brainstem thinking, right? That's base brain thinking, and I think a lot of these movements reduce to that because you can't process on that level of human interaction. Like these big crowds can't come together and have a nuanced way to move forward, right? Especially when there's no leader, right? Again, with the civil rights movement, the amount of change and progress that happened was because you had these leaders, right? You had Malcolm X, you had Martin Luther King, right? And they were having these debates, these intellectual debates about philosophies and like, okay, like I believe this and I believe that. And it was like, okay, like even though the crowd behind them is definitely reduced to its lowest common denominator, you had these smart individuals at the top that would take responsibility for what the crowd did, that led that power. Because with those crowds you get power, right? So we don't have that today. We don't like Tristan. Who's a guy who?
Facebook dude?
No, the dude who started Black Lives Matter.
It was 3 girls, wasn't it?
Was it?
Yeah.
See, exactly. I don't even know. they don't have the prominence of an MLK.
And they're dumb as fuck too.
That doesn't help. I don't even know them. Right?
Yeah, no, like they've been like, we're trained Marxists, and it's like, it's how do you even become a trained Marxist? Like, how, like, is there a school for
that? Sounds terrifying.
Yeah,
sounds like some Marvel shit.
Well, like, if you looked at the Black Lives Matter website, they've actually updated it now. Because like, I was, when it happened, I was like, what do these fucking guys even want?
Yeah,
like, okay, it makes sense, but what do you want?
Yeah, like,
and then they had like a what do we want, and they said abolish the police, all of the police, and there's no like we need to defund them. There was there was like we need to abolish, as was said.
Right.
And then on top of that, another thing they said, like, we need to destroy the nuclear family, which was
what?
Like, we need to the nuclear family shouldn't exist.
Isn't that, are you
it's gone. It's gone now, because I think people realized, like, yo, what the fuck. Because then, like, I remember when I said anything at the start of that George Floyd thing. Yeah. When I said anything about like anything, I was like, I was racist, I was evil. Like, I couldn't talk. I couldn't fucking talk. When I said anything about it, I forget where the fuck I was going with that. But yeah, so like, oh yeah, so pretty much everyone was like, yeah, you're immediately racist, right? Yeah. And then as the months went on, and I think like public opinion perception started realizing, yo, what the fuck is this, you know?
What is this?
Then I noticed like the people on my my Instagram who post all these like the virtue signal stuff, they did start going like, regardless of what you think about Black Lives Matter as an organization. Well. So then like it started shifting, that people were like, all right, like, these guys are fucking dumb,
right?
You know, and it's like, all right, we do have a problem with racism, but maybe just because someone thinks Black Lives Matter as an organization is fucking stupid, that doesn't make them racist, you know. And I was pleased to see that. And that was that's something that I was actually talking with my boy Flores about, because he sent me this thing of like, he posted on Instagram like a year ago. He's like, bro, like, for coronavirus, don't lock down, like, just protect the people who are elderly. And he sent it to me. He's like, yo, I posted this a year ago and nothing has changed. He's like, this is why I'm sick of talking about this shit, because like, I've had, I came up with a solution a year ago. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And then I was just saying, like, but like, we need like, it's sort of still your responsibility, like, even though you're bored of talking about it, you need to say what you have to say, because you need to just shift public perception a little bit, piece by piece, as much as you can. Otherwise it just goes down that like fucking weird path. Again, the only way
to beat it's kind of fucked up, because the only way to beat virtue signaling is to virtue signal on the opposite side. Right, like if you were in the Soviet Union, or if you were in these like super insular community civilization or societies that existed, and you think everybody thinks like you, but there's a silent majority or you think everybody thinks the opposite, right? You're this lone guy who thinks like, this is kind of fucked up, I wish everything was different, but you think everybody else doesn't think like you. You're gonna suppress your thoughts, and you're just gonna go along with it. But again, like, a lot of these issues, there is a silent majority of people who just have common sense. It's like, we're just all going to stay inside forever. That's the answer to this thing.
It's the game plan.
Like, we've all seen the statistics. We all know, like, we've all been outside. Anybody who said they fully locked down forever and didn't break any of these rules, this whole thing, I want to see that person. Because
I didn't. I actually, like, at the beginning, like,
no, the whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing. No, like, I'm like,
it's been a year, right? And so the idea is like, oh, are we all still doing this? We're all still on the same team. But I know people that aren't. People who are cheating, who are still virtue signaling, like, I wear 2 masks. It's like, I saw you at a party last week. Do you know what I mean?
Do you actually know people like that?
Not like a party, but like, you were outside, like, with people in a way that's like, I saw you at a restaurant. I saw you at a Walmart. It's like, if you're that scared, if you're deathly afraid of this virus, you would behave a lot differently than what your words say, right? So it's like this betrayal, and it's just, again, it does get annoying talking about it, because it's like, are we all just gonna pretend that like it was what it was a year ago, or are we gonna move on?
Like,
right?
I remember walking around when it first happened. I was in Philippines and I had to fly back to Canada, and then I had to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I was like right beside Hamilton Ticats. Like, I got some place in the hood. Like, I was like in some sketchy area.
Oh, you just flew out wherever you just,
yeah, I just got an Airbnb, and just like, because I couldn't go back to my parents' house, so I was like, because I had to protect them. So pretty much I just got an Airbnb at like in the hood. And I was like living in this place, and the only thing I could do was get food delivered to me. And then I went to the Big B across the 2 feet away was open, and same with like a McDonald's. So in the morning I would like drive through the McDonald's drive-through, get a coffee, and then every once in a while I'd go get some candy at the Big B. And I remember thinking like, I was like, this person needs to stay the fuck away from me. You know, like this person needs to be. Like everyone was super paranoid. And I was like walking in, and like it was my first time getting back to Canada, and there was like these big glass windows everywhere, and I was like, damn, this is wild. And then like I was like, bro, I hope me going to Big B didn't catch me the corona. You know, I hope I didn't get the virus.
Is it on the surfaces?
Yeah, and like no one knew what was going on. You know? But then now there's so much research about it. And like this is one of the things that kind of weirds me out about it is like they say, because I was worried like, all right, if I'm in an elevator with someone, can I get it? And they're like, no, like you need to be around them for 15 minutes. And it's like you can't get it if you're like just going on an elevator and that person has coronavirus. Like it's not a big deal. The reason we have the masks and the reason we're staying 6 feet away is in case they cough. So if they're not like coughing in your vicinity, even if they have it, you're not really getting it. And then I'm like, well, that doesn't really sound like the super contagious thing where everyone's gonna get coronavirus, because like that, you know, that sounds pretty fucking difficult to get. Like I'm not around most people for longer than 15 minutes. I haven't been coughed on like in 20 years, you know? Like, so how am I getting this? How am I gonna get this fucking super contagious virus that like, and that they're like, oh, it's also impossible to get it outside. And then there's a rule like fucking, oh yeah, you weren't here yet, but like we went to go into this, like to go buy our SIM cards, and this guy's like, tapabocas, and we're outside. And like that rule of like wearing a mask outside, it's so fucking stupid. And it's like, it doesn't make any.
There's no science.
It's like follow science, but like let's wear our masks. Like let's wear 2 masks, you know? Like, let's wear because 2 condoms, you know? It's like.
And it's like this weird follow the science, but also we need you to signify that you're on our team. That's not science. Science isn't about teams. Science is about truth, right?
And it's frustrating that there are scientists that say, hey, by the way, this is how it's going, you know, and they're not mentioning it, you know? Like, this, you know, Robin Babber, the dude who, he's like a politician from Oakville or something like that. No. He came out with this. He like pretty much was like, hey, by the way, like we need to lift these lockdowns. He made this very professional thing. Immediately, like he was a liberal or something like that, and they just like got rid of him. And they're like, now you're no longer a member of the Liberal Party. And it's like he didn't say anything.
He just said he just science.
He's like, hey, like here's what the science says, and it just went against the mainstream narrative of it, and they just got rid of him. Now he's a politician as a independent, and it's like, and then he posted like this other doctor who used to be like the main doctor in Ontario. He's like, no, like the metrics that you have in terms of like case fatality rate, I forget what it was, but they're like the only reason I can, like, I've thought about why you would use this metric, and the only reason I can think of is to instill fear. Like it doesn't make any sense that you're using this metric as a metric to measure this. It doesn't make any sense. And then he like made an open letter too, and like just
he's gone.
Crickets, you know, like you don't hear anything. And it's like, bro, like I trusted the government at the start of this. The fact that the government doesn't address these things that are being said, you know, they're not saying like, hey, we're taking into account what this like person who actually has something to say has said, you know, and they just don't address it. And it's like, why aren't you addressing it? You know, why? And then it's like even all the social media things, like we were talking about, like that hydroxychloroquine. It's like that girl is a doctor who's saying that. You can say whatever you want, and then they're like, oh, she's actually a witch doctor. Da da da. I was like, well, she has a PhD. Like she has a real PhD. Yeah. And it's like, then they removed all that from the internet. Yeah. And you can't, in my opinion, you can't do that. You can't, like, if it's a dangerous thought, you know, like, let it. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's you can't just remove an idea because it doesn't agree with the mainstream narrative. And that's like a dangerous precedent. Right. That's what I was saying with like with that book I'm reading, the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, is Nazi Germany. They had they pretty much, when Hitler came to power, he just removed all the newspaper stands and everything like that, and pretty much there was a Nazi newspaper, and that's it. And like all of the information before they invaded Poland was Poland is aggressively doing this and this and this. And what they ended up doing was they sent a bunch of SS officers in Polish uniforms to go shoot a bunch of their concentration camp people dressed up as Germans, and then they're like, Poland attacked us. And people, like, they didn't have any, you know, like, people in Germany, they thought that like everyone was closing in on Germany, when it was actually like this one man was trying to conquer all these different places.
Yeah.
And they didn't know because they didn't have control of information. You know, like the information that they were siphoned was controlled.
All right.
So that's why when I'm seeing like these, you know, when I'm seeing the censorship that we're seeing now, it's like, yeah, like even like we're gonna get rid of Donald Trump from all social media, like that.
That was insane.
That fucking guy's not even allowed to have a Spotify account.
That is insane.
Like, yeah. Like,
him, Alex Jones, like a couple of these people.
Yeah, it's
just
like,
wipe them out.
Mm-hmm. It's like, well, the fact that they aren't allowed to talk makes me be like, oh, maybe there's some.
What do they have to say?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, like if you're censoring information, like maybe it's too like we're talking about, like getting to the lowest common denominator, like the average person. Maybe they're fucking stupid and they can't. Yeah. It's like, oh, like if we're going to talk about hydroxychloroquine or like Tide Pods, like eating Tide Pods to cure coronavirus, they'll do that. And we have to protect those people. But I mean, like, it's kind of, I should be allowed to get the information I want.
What happened to Darwin?
Yeah. Like, if they're going to do, if the information's dangerous, then let them go. Like, fucking, like, bro, like, there's a reason. Like I was thinking about this, like with tribes back in the day, you know, like I'm sure there was a tribe of people and they all just fucked, you know, there was just like a big polygamous tribe, you know, but then monogamy came around because they're like, all right, here's your partner, you're gonna just have this partner and you're gonna just all work together as a tribe and you have this, but then like the fucking tribe, maybe they just stopped to eat. They didn't worry about food and everything because like I want to fuck like the neighbor, you know? Yeah, they do. But I'm talking about like on like an extreme level, and like they got weeded out of evolution because they didn't do the other things, and that's kind of why maybe I'm like this completely making this up. Maybe that's why monogamy was so popular for a while because it's like evolutionarily those tribes who were monogamous, they survived long term, you know. I don't even know why I brought that up, but yeah.
Because you were talking about Darwin,
people
right?
dying from being stupid, you know. It's like if and they die from it. It's like we put these myths on society. It's like even with like going back to the evolutionary talk. I love this subject, but like with chimpanzees and bonobos, right? Chimpanzees are very territorial over sex, right? Bonobos have sex with everybody, right? And they've evolved in two different paths, right? Two different, almost diametrically opposed philosophies on how to handle your body, right? But they both almost coexist, right? They're not in the same species, but like they're very similar, right? I don't even know if they can mate, but I know there's enough of a split for them to be speciated, right? And it's like, okay, nature allows for that, right? If you have different, like flat earth people, I don't personally subscribe to that philosophy, but like you can exist and it could be dangerous. Like people could, because if you look into flat earth, right, and you look at where it goes sometimes, a lot of it's anti-Semitic. A lot of it is like, there's these, like a lot of it kind of, some of it leads to like QAnon, right? And again, it's like, why was QAnon wasn't really stopped. Do you know what I mean? They had the ability to stop it. We saw that with Donald Trump, right? They took him off the AWS servers. That's insane. You couldn't do that with the QAnon boards. You couldn't crack down with that. I don't know. It's like this house of cards. Like, I don't want to assume like intent to this whole thing, but it's like, why didn't you do it for that idea? It bubbled up to the point where people went and rushed the Capitol. So clearly it had implications in real life. Right, but the thing you're saying about QAnon, the same things happened with the same accusation you have against QAnon or against Alex Jones is the same accusation you have against QAnon, right? Where it's like these ideas can stoke actions in real life, and it's like they pick and choose, and it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But from a perspective, it can, but that perspective is often deemed as conspiracy theory or anti-science or anti-whatever. And so there's this narrow band of acceptable ideas and philosophies that we're kind of like unknowingly stepping into and almost unknowingly being funneled into, where it's like little tags under videos like this hasn't been fact checked. It's like, by who? Who has the authority to tell you what's true or what's not? Like how? Like
I don't know. It stresses me out. It kind of like makes me a little anxious.
Yeah, it's kind of like, who do you trust? And then like there's like, well, trust the science, trust the experts. And then there was like the WHO, the World Health Organization. They came up with all this like made up shit. You know?
And it's provably made up.
Yeah, and it's like, well, they also like their biggest funder is China.
Right.
And they have all this, you know, like China's sketchy as
fuck.
Like China's sketchy, and they have active concentration camps going on. Actually, I shouldn't say that because that could all be fake. Like in order to build like a
the Poland
divide
thing?
against China. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like no one knows what is real, and like I don't know for sure. I have to do more research on these Muslim concentration.
I know
camps.
there were GPS. Again, you can't verify like the GPS, but I know there was like GPS photos of the concentration camps. China denies it, but again, we have no idea. There is no way. The point is, there's no way to verify facts. There's no way to verify information. Really, right? The only thing you can verify is what's in here, and even that is sometimes questioned to.
It's a little sketchy too.
Right. So it's like the idea that there's going to be some outside authority that we have no idea who this authority is, right? A panel of experts fact check this, and it's like, who are they?
Yeah, exactly.
Who are they?
And like also people in government. I was actually reading this in Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's like this is just kind of the separation between like real life and like people who don't have skin in the game. So have you ever read Nassim Taleb's
Skin in the Game?
Skin in the Game?
It's on my list.
Fantastic. Okay. But so essentially they're saying like the entrepreneur, they get better if they are able to like do something more efficiently and spend less money. Then like they like their shareholders are happier. But in the government, if you spend less money, they take your budget away. So your job is actually to spend the maximum budget. So you like business, which like if we're in a capitalist society, their job is to run a capitalist society, or capitalism. Their job is to make money. They do these actions, whereas like the government, their actual role is like completely the opposite. So like what we determined was how society runs. Like the government works on an opposite thing, you know. And the people who are able to function in that, they may not be super smart. They may fucking
they're almost stupid, the opposite.
You know, it's like, okay, like let's make these decisions, you know.
Right.
And that's another thing about. So in the Skin in the Game book, they talk about like he's like people they invade Iraq, for example. They invade Iraq. The person who decided to invade Iraq, come on, bro.
Yo, these guys set up with 2 speakers in front of our house.
Way.
We gotta show this. He starts blasting.
Hang on. This man.
Oh my gosh.
Right,
I mean, that's a perfect way to stop the podcast. But get that on video. That's. Oh man. No, it's not even us.
Ay, cuando florecen las amapolas, una mesita que es para ti. La luna duerme sobre su teja, y entre música y canciones, solo pronto no yo espero, cuando florecen las amapolas. Ay, cuando florecen las amapolas.
Well.
Cuando florecen las amapolas, mi viejo es buena y mi viejo es buena. Cuando florecen las amapolas, mi amor.
I gotta get this guy dancing.
Es una casa que es un primo